Hi everyone! Today I'm going to be drawing these tulips with colored pencils. You can see me starting off here on the first tulip, and I am using Prismacolor, Polychromos, and then a few Caran d'Ache Luminance pencils and Derwent Lightfast pencils. For this drawing, I am working on Strathmore Bristol Smooth Paper. And the reference image came from Adobe Stock, which I licensed. So if you want to draw this yourself, you will need to go over and purchase a license there to draw this. I'm working through these tulips in a very similar way each time. You're going to see me going through and outlining everything and then blocking in the darkest shadow areas. And then I'm going to be coming through with my white Prismacolor pencil to block in any of the highlights and start to create the look of those veiny lines that are going to give these tulips shape and direction. The darkest pencils I was using for this piece were the Prismacolor Dioxazine Purple Hue and the Derwent Lightfast Blue Violet and also Nightshade. And using those dark valued pencils really helps create a nice contrast, which is what makes this drawing really pop off the page. It's going to be that contrast between those really dark purples and then those really bright white highlights. And I would say that the combination of the contrast and the little wispy directional lines that are all over the place on these tulips are the two most important things you need to capture here. The Polychromos pencils are really nice for creating details like those sharp wispy lines that you can see in there, so I definitely utilize those. They have a really nice hard lead, so they hold a point really well, which makes it nice for getting those details. Here you can see me getting a start on one of the leaves that's peeking around the side of the tulips here. For the leaves, I was using a combination of the same pencils. I was using a lot of the Chrome Oxide Green and Permanent Green Olive from Polychromos, and from Prismacolor I used quite a bit of the dark green and also this combination of three pencils that I really like to use for leaves, which is Kelly Green, Celadon Green, and Sap Green Light. And then from the Luminance line I was using Sap Green Dark, and from Lightfast some of the Racing Green. Those are really dark values of green, which helps to get the shadows, but for the most part in the shadows I was using a lot of black. Alright, on to the next tulip, and you can see me just starting to get this blocked in. These tulips required a lot of work in these initial stages, which is kind of the foundation of each tulip. I had to really map out exactly where everything was going to go. There was a lot going on. These were not what I would consider to be beginner tulips necessarily. A lot of lines going in different directions, a lot of highlights in different places and shadows, but once I have all of that foundation laid, then it's pretty easy to come back over with my mid-tone colors and just fill it all in. And I would also say that once I blend these out with the solvent, it was pretty easy to go back over and just refine the details and make them look really good. This was a really unusual looking tulip there with the top part of the where it's sort of unfurling, and so you just want to make sure that you trust your reference and draw what you see and don't get too panicked. Sometimes parts of your drawing will look really strange until you have the rest of it drawn in, and then you'll realize it all kind of comes together and makes sense. So this particular tulip that I'm working on right here is probably my favorite on the entire drawing. I just think that the shape of it and everything was really pretty. And the colors are really nice. But again, you can see laying that foundation, there are a lot of different little sections, and within those sections there are different colors and lines going in different directions. So on my Patreon, where I created a tutorial series for this, I did list this as more of an intermediate advanced drawing. Would not necessarily encourage beginners to tackle it because there was a lot going on, but I also wouldn't discourage anybody from attempting it either, because frankly, when I was a beginner, I probably would have. Sometimes it can help to push your skills a little bit faster if you attempt things that are above your skill level. Maybe just don't expect it to be perfect. And my drawing isn't perfect either, so maybe that's okay. So here, starting to work on a section of the leaves. I went back and forth on this drawing between the leaves and the tulips themselves. Filling that in with the Luminance Sap Green Dark. Again, that has a really nice dark value. There's also a layer of black pencil in there. Don't hesitate to put some black pencil in the darkest shadows underneath your greens. You can always come over those blacks with more greens so that you have a really dark value of green. I do not have a green in any of my sets that's dark enough to give me the darkest value that I got on here, so I did have to go in with the black pencil. And you can see how I'm just layering over and over, lots of layers on each part of this drawing. And on to another tulip. This is the tulip that I drew in real time for my Patreon tutorials. So if this video is moving way too fast for you, you can go over there and watch this one in real time while I explain exactly what I'm doing and which pencils I'm using and my thought process in all of this. It can be misleading when you watch these time-lapse videos. This entire drawing took, I think, around 18 hours. Each tulip probably took around an hour. And maybe a little more. At least the first few tulips probably took closer to an hour and a half. Once I got the hang of things, I was able to move through faster, which is almost always the case with my drawings. But I'm just layering in the base, and then I am coming over this and blending it out with the solvent, creating a nice base layer. And now while that dries, I'm going to go over here and block in the next tulip, and I'll still come back to that other one. It was not finished. Very rarely, if ever, have the application of the solvent be my final layer. Almost always I'm going to come back through and refine things, and that process is a lot easier because I know where everything goes. I just need to go over and crisp things up and sharpen the edges and adjust the colors somewhat. And even though each of these tulips was slightly different, I still followed that same process, darkening those shadow areas and burnishing the white pencil where I want the highlights to be, and then coming through with the mid-tone colors. I was using a lot of that Luminance Ultramarine Violet pencil, and then a lot of the Lightfast Blue Violet in the shadows and the dioxazine purple hue. If you're using Polychromos, mauve and blue violet are really good choices. Also purple violet and Parma violet from Prismacolor. You really could easily draw this with just one brand if that's what you have. I like to mix and match my brands of pencils so that I can take advantage of the different characteristics from each brand. But it definitely took me a while to build those up. For probably a year I drew with just the Prismacolor, and then I got my Polychromos and drew for those, or with those combined with the Prismacolor, for another year. Then I added in the Luminance, and then finally the Lightfast. So you can build up those brands. It helps to work with one for a period of time so you can really get comfortable with each brand and what it can do and how it works on different papers, what colors are available. When you see me using the eraser to roughen up the surface and brighten things up, the reason I'm able to do that is because I have a layer of white on the paper before I came over with the purples. So I came through with that white pencil first, and that way when I erase up the purple, that white underneath it shows. You're not going to get that same effect if you don't put the white pencil down first. And now I am starting to work on the rest of the leaves. Just like with the tulips, it was really important to have that high contrast, and it was also really important for me to have lots of directional lines and veins that were showing through to catch the eye and create the look of shape. And for example, this leaf that I'm working on right here was just kind of a loop-de-loop. And I create that effect with highlights and veiny lines. I worked through this section of leaves in real time over on Patreon as well. Talk through to tell you what I'm doing. Again, it's particularly deceiving when you see me do it this fast because that one loop-de-loop leaf took me about an hour. Using a lot of that really sharp black Polychromos to create lots of shadow and dimension in those leaves. Helps to fill in any little sections that you know for sure are going to be that dark black. Leave space to go back over with the green pencils. There was a section of this drawing that I did not get on camera, so I'm really close to the finish of this time-lapse video here. And here is my finished drawing. And like I said, if you would like to see how I draw this, I have a 4-part tutorial series over on Patreon, and I also have several other tulip tutorials that range from beginner real-time videos all the way up to advanced drawings. So head over there if you are interested in learning more, and I will see you next week with another drawing. Bye!